Another World is a great, great game that was developed by Eric Chahi in 1991. The way we are displaying it here is by using a tower PC, so like a classic way, because it was also adapted to various platforms. The reason why I really like Another World is because it was one of the first instances in which you had to fight for your survival, of course, but also you could move and explore a different world in a very interesting way. And Eric Chahi had used really advanced for the time effects and all the best that he could do with technology in order to give a sense of really a spatial progression. You know, Chahi began programming in the early 1980s for Logiciel, for your French company Logiciel, and then he worked with Atari and Amiga on various platforms, and he developed several games, and he also was working for another company called Chip. He started working on Another World in the late 1980s when he was also figuring out another game called Future Wars. But what I have to say is that really he was always a master at what he does. And you know, in this game, in Another World, he also had some very rare touches, like the fact that characters were communicating non-verbally with each other via gestures and with actions. You know, so that was something that was not happening in other video games. And also another detail that I like particularly as a design curator was the fact that Eric could control every single detail of the game. It was his company, it was his game, so the attention is really paramount. And from the music to the packaging to everything else, it was truly his own vision. Katamari Damacy is a wonderful classic. It's an example of that beautiful attitude towards video games that is so Japanese, where the function or the goal of the game is so crazy as to become completely engrossing. It was designed by Keita Takahashi and it was first developed in 2003. The version that we have in the galleries at MoMA is the version for PlayStation 2 that Namco developed for that particular station. And I really love the fact that the narration is so completely crazy and cartoonish. You are a prince that is sent on Earth by the Emperor of the Cosmos to try and develop a big ball, a clump of objects that then can become a planet. If you're fast enough and you make it big enough in the amount of time that you have allotted, it can become a planet. And that's the game, really. You're rolling this ball. Katamari Damacy means clump soul, and you're rolling this ball and you're trying to roll it as fast as you can and to make a clump, a ball as big as you can. That's it. SimCity 2000 is the version of SimCity that we chose for the galleries of MoMA, for the collection of MoMA. It says SimCity 2000, but it was actually developed in 1993, and it's a classic by one of the biggest video game designers ever, which is Will Wright. Will Wright at that time owned his own company called Maxis, which then he sold to Electronic Arts. So the title now is in the Electronic Arts archive, and they're coming out with new versions. There were new versions after SimCity 2000 and then also further down. The reason why we chose SimCity 2000 is because it's so evident, the way you build the city and the endeavor that you have as the builder, the founder of the city is so clear and clean cut. It is sophisticated already, but you still are working on blocks. And we thought that since what we wanted to show was really the behavior and the experience of building a city, it was clearer with SimCity 2000. And in the galleries here, we're showing a demo that was actually found online. It's a demo by a player. We also worked, of course, with the company and with the Electronic Arts, but it was great to find this player that really narrated the way he developed a city. What is amazing about EVE Online is how cinematic it is and how truly collective it is. I'm always incredibly stunned by the dedication, both in time and in professionalism, that players put into the game. It was also touching that Ambassador Christopher Stevens, that was actually killed in the Benghazi attack a few months ago, was a very important player in the community of EVE Online. So the players, after his death, dedicated some parts of the EVE Online universe to him. And it was amazing to think that such an important politician and diplomat took this kind of game very seriously. And that's what I like about EVE Online. It's much more than a game. And it's a different kind of universe. It's also, it's not a playground, it's a testing ground for what then happened in real life. EVE Online, in this particular case, is displayed in our galleries by a demo, by means of a demo. The CCP Games people asked the community of players to record a day in the life of EVE Online for MoMA. So in the galleries we have this amazing collective video documentary together with some infographics and a beautiful wallpaper display of the universe of EVE Online. Good interaction design is a good example of behavior and a good exploitation of the possibilities of the digital space. When we are in a screen, because we are in a screen, we can experience behaviors and ways of moving that we have never experienced in reality. And I would like designers to take advantage of it to give us a new sense of time, a new sense of space, and also the ability to experience new behaviors. That is already happening in many different platforms. Even just the idea of having an avatar, even though it's a little old, was a way to have a new experience. But truly, interaction design is about that, the space in between. We started thinking of collecting video games a long time ago, with my colleagues. I remember that we had a meeting, like a symposium behind closed doors in 2006, talking about new categories of design that we should acquire. And at that time, we were talking about film titles, we were talking about fonts, we were talking about interfaces, and also about video games. It took us a long time because at MoMA we always move very carefully and we do a lot of research. So Kate Carmody, who's the curatorial assistant I worked with, and Paul Galloway, who's the study center supervisor, and I called upon a lot of real experts, video game experts, designers, to help us make a list of games that we should look into. And then, we selected more and more, and we came down to a wish list of 40 video games. I hope that this first step for an art museum will open up also to the world, and will explain to the world that video games are, of course, a form of design, but also a form of art. There are other museums that have been collecting video games for a long time, but they're usually museums of the moving image or museums of digital technology or museums that document material culture. They're not art museums, and I think art museums have been collecting artists' video games, but it's not the same thing. So I'm hoping that a design collection can break the ice and finally open the doors of museums to the avalanche of video game art. Acquisition is not difficult when you think about what you want to display in the galleries. What is more complicated is getting what you need to preserve an object in the collection, because what we asked the companies initially was the software, the code. That was not always possible. There are companies and designers that are more open and others that are a little more protective of their intellectual property, even though the Museum of Modern Art is like Fort Knox when it comes to intellectual property. So every game had to be taken from a different route. In some cases we were able to secure the code, which is the holy grail. In other cases we were able to get a simulation or an emulation. And in other cases, we were only able to get the cartridges, which is, the dongled software, which is not exactly what we were seeking. But, what is important is that we established a relationship with the companies that is going to go on in the future. And indeed, the acquisitions like this cannot be just clear-cut once and for all. They're an evolving relationship. We're hoping that we will be able to do more in the future.